Good evening and welcome to Crossroads and our weekly or our monthly seminar tonight. As always, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you for being here. My name is Tom Jacobson. On a volunteer basis, I help lead one of the groups out of Woodbury, Lutheran Church in Woodbury. And there are 3 locations of Crossroads, although we are strictly online right now with our seminars. So hope someday in the future that we get back to in-person, networking and seminars and those types of things. But right now, welcome for joining us here on the Zoom webinar. So quickly, Crossroads delivers a lot of different services for free of charge, and this is one of those things. You can check us out on our website to find other things. Tonight's agenda, quickly, I'm going to be introducing the program, and then I'll introduce our Crossroads in My Career speaker, which will be a video tonight. And then we'll have our main event, our Impression Management plus Zoom by David Maggi. And then I'll have at the end, I will do a little bit on Crossroads. So stay with us. That's our program. I'd like to share a little something from the Bible in the book of Proverbs 24:27. Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. What this is trying to tell us is we need to be ready spiritually. Fill yourself with gratitude and serve others, and it will impact your life greatly. Fill your heart with hope, and go forward and find what you are passionate about in your life. And that will make you, give you the career opportunities you are looking for in transition. There's a lot of great advice in the Bible and in Scripture, and all we have to do is search for it. Let me just open us up in a quick prayer. Lord, thank you for bringing us together tonight and allowing us to share with you some of the wisdom of our speaker and speakers. Guide us where your plans will lead us. If we are in transition, help us to have conversations through prayer that will guide us and help strengthen us in other ways, that we shall be able to go out and find the opportunities that are out there that will meet our needs and will meet the needs of others. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our Career Crossroads video speaker. Tonight, Christina Wright will be joining us. She'll be joining us via video from a year ago. And Christina is right now is employed through Thrivent, and she's thriving. But at the time, she had several transition periods. So her video will be coming up next. Harry, it's not playing. No video. No sound.
I appreciate you inviting me. I'm really excited to be here and just be able to share a little bit about myself and my job transition journey. Just by way of introduction, as Tom mentioned, I've spent nearly 20 years in corporate communications, so a majority of my career, really working in the financial services industry within credit unions. For the first 14 years, I was at the local trade association for Minnesota credit unions, and then was recruited away by a local credit union. And really, they created a position for me on their senior leadership team. And it was a new role, so I was given a lot of autonomy and flexibility to kind of create it as I went. And I got to do some really great work. But over time, I turned into a bit of a utility player. I had a nebulous title that didn't really describe what I was doing, and I really started driving for more clarity in my role. And as we worked toward that, I was starting to realize that the direction that my role was shaping up really wasn't appealing to me. It didn't really use my communication skills. So I made the tough decision to leave a good organization and a steady paycheck and stability. But I was also choosing to leave an environment where I never quite felt like I fit in for whatever reason. But it wasn't something I had ever experienced before. So it was really strange to me. And after operating in that kind of place for the better part of 5 years, I knew it was time for me to move on. And I truly believe that kind of throughout my career, the Lord had drawn me there to that place for a reason. And I learned a lot, I grew a lot, and I developed a lot while I was there, but it was time for me to move on to something new. I felt very fortunate in my departure to get a severance. So I left feeling apprehensive, but optimistic. I had some internal things to work through and to figure out. I really needed some time to process, like, what didn't work about the role I was in, and really, how can I learn from it and move forward? And I found myself in a place where many of you, I'm sure, feel that same way, like, what's next? I didn't quite know, but I also felt a tremendous weight lifted off of my shoulders. And I really felt like the Lord had brought me to that time and place for a specific purpose. And so in the time that I was out of work, I really had the opportunity to focus on my family and to spend some quality time with my husband and my kids. And that's time that had suffered a little bit in recent years, due to my role. And it allowed me the time to work through the process of, what am I really good at? When I feel alive in my work, what am I doing? And so those of you who haven't kind of gone through that introspective process, I encourage you to ask yourself those questions and really kind of dig into what it is that lights you up and makes you feel alive in your work. So this was August of 2019, so pre-pandemic. And I honestly felt pretty confident that I would land well. That it might take a little while, it might take a few months or whatever, but I was feeling optimistic about the future. So I took a couple months to really just to do some of that internal processing that I mentioned. I was monitoring job boards and kind of honing in on what I actually wanted to do. I'd read a job description and I'd think, ooh, that sounds good, but I don't want that part. And so it allowed me to really hone in on what I wanted to do. And then in late October, I took a trip to Ireland with my 86-year-old grandma. And when I returned in November, that's really when I started to get serious about my job search. And so that was the time when I joined Crossroads and began to expand my network. And I really felt like I was making some great headway kind of out of the gate. I was a finalist for a role in November. I had some really great opportunities in front of me in January and February, and then the pandemic hit. And so for me, that was a time when I realized that connection was more important than ever. And so during that time, I started my own networking group where we had weekly connections. It was a lot of folks from Minnesota Crossroads or from Easter or White Box, folks I had met, along the way in my journey that I felt a connection with. I felt were good eggs, we're going to land well, and we're, going to get snapped up by some employer in the near future. we like to think that we were doing, virtual networking before virtual networking was cool, before that's all we could do. But for me, it was a really good opportunity. And I think for the rest of the group to get acquainted with video chat and explore and get comfortable with these newer tools that a lot of us hadn't been using in our daily jobs. So in addition to that group that I facilitated, I also joined a few other groups, a professional communications association. I volunteered my time to be able to showcase my abilities. And then I really followed the advice that others had given me about making 10 to 15 one-to-one personal networking connections every week. So for me, I felt like I really needed to treat my job search like a full-time job. I heard somebody say once, you got to work at it like it's all up to you, but then put your faith in God, knowing that it's really all up to him. But my continual prayer during my job search was that the Lord would close the doors he wanted to close and open the doors that he wanted to open. And that was really important grounding for me during my search. As I'm sure a lot of you know, if you've been in job transition for any length of time, it's really a roller coaster. You go from hot to cold. And it can be a continual battle to stay positive and keep moving forward, even if it's just small steps at a time. So during my 13 months in transition, I was a finalist for 4 roles at 4 different companies. And yeah, when you become emotionally invested in a process or in a job, it's definitely disappointing to make it to the final round and then not be selected. But that was a door that the Lord closed. And thinking back on my prayer, I needed to be thankful that he was answering my prayer. He was making it pretty clear. He was closing doors. And, looking back, I'm so grateful for some of the doors that he closed. Many of which were, roles that felt so right. But now in hindsight, I can look back and see, many of those same companies going through massive layoffs. One of the hiring managers that I was interviewing with and talking to, as recently as August, got laid off in November. And so I just think about, if I had started a job and then gotten laid off a month later, I don't think I would be in a better, position for that. So I really ended up being grateful for those closed doors. Certainly I took my time to throw my pity party and maybe mourn the loss of something I thought was going to be. But, looking back over my time of transition, I can see how I was able to kind of get over it and move forward faster and faster each time. And I really feel like it was, my faith and dependence on the Lord that pulled me through. One of the verses I clung to during this time is Isaiah 55:8. And the Lord says, my thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, and my ways are far beyond anything you can imagine. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts, and his ways are higher than our ways are. And I like the comparison of like a parent to a child. So when you have kids, your kids want to eat candy for lunch and for dinner. Yet as the parent, I'm not going to let you do that. And then the kid throws a tantrum. And it's kind of like that with God too. I might want something really bad and not understand why he won't give it to me, but he knows better and he has a plan and I just need to trust it. So, honestly, my personal journey, I felt so close to the Lord during this time. I had a lot more mental clarity. I had more time to pray and journal and to get deeper into the word and read devotionals. A great opportunity for me was to be able to incorporate faith into my weekly networking group. And I felt like that became such an important outlet and connection point for me, really to share my faith and to tell others about what the Lord was speaking to me, which was so often words of, encouragement and hope. And really it became like a ministry to me, to the point that on my 3rd rejection as a finalist, one of my first thoughts was that, my work in this new ministry in my job transition group, that my work wasn't done yet and that he still had more for me to do in that place and in that season. It just kind of reminded me of what Esther says in her book of the Bible, that perhaps the Lord has placed me here for such a time as this. So as Tom mentioned, I landed at 𝙈𝙤 just this past November, and I started December 14th. So I'm closing in on that 3-month mark, but I'm working in internal communications at a Fortune 500 company. And I mean, truly, I feel like I'm doing exactly what I set out to do. I'm using communications to create clarity and translating strategy into action, working on change communications and organizational messaging and positioning, and really helping to build transparency and trust and employee engagement within the company. So all in all, my search was a 13-month journey, way longer than I would have expected, but I'm just so grateful for it. For the time I had to really be free and to be with my family and to embrace, the gift that the Lord was giving to me. I think the last thing I want to mention, I'm especially grateful to Minnesota Crossroads, which was the first place that I had started when I began networking back in November of 2019. But really, Crossroads gave me a shift in mindset around networking, in that networking doesn't have to be schmoozy and slick, but it really is the focus on how can I help others. And that for me was a game changer when it came to networking. So I will leave you with a verse from 2 Corinthians that relates to that, chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. And when they're troubled, we'll be able to give them the same comfort that God has given us. So that's my story. Thanks so much for allowing me to share it, Tom.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Christine. I got to share in some of your journey, and I know how focused you were and how goal-oriented you were, and how much the spiritual component really made a difference in how you approached it and really focused on things. And you were always strong throughout, and you never showed that weakness if you had any. So that was kind of surreal to watch myself on video. I'm very thankful that we did get to hear from Christina. She was very she had a great transition. Not everybody has transitions like that, and hers was very good for her. And it's good to hear that that people can thrive in transition. So I was very happy to hear her speak tonight again and share her story. At this time, I'd like to introduce our webinar speaker tonight. David has spoken. I've heard David speak many times. I'm never disappointed. He always shares great wisdom, and I'm looking forward to tonight's more than anything because he's got the Zoom component that I so wanted to hear. And David, I'm going to let you take it away and introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I am always honored to be here. So Tom, thank you. Harry, thank you. And Christina, I know she's not on live, but God, it was wonderful to hear her. Really enjoyed her presentation. That well done, simply well done. So please pass that along if you would be so kind. By way of background, let me do a quick introduction, maybe sort of a why I'm here, and then get into the presentation. And obviously I'm on share screen. You can see it's on impression management, and plus I added a still because we're going to be with Zoom, I think, forever and ever and ever. So we're going to talk a little bit about being online, and here I sit online, so we'll be talking about that. By way of background, my entire career has been matching people and jobs. That's all I really do. I spent the first portion of my career in corporate America, Farm Credit Services, Honeywell, and the Pillsbury Company in HR, but gravitated towards what we called at the time staffing. We didn't call it talent acquisition or anything fancy. We called it staffing. And my last role was managing staffing for the Pillsbury Company. Left corporate life and went into the career transition outplacement space, working with people who were in transition on helping them get reemployed. And ultimately, I sold that company and started a retained search firm. So what I do now is work with organizations as they seek very senior level people that for one reason or another, they are not able to find. More on that later if anybody's interested, but that isn't why I'm here. The impression management piece or presentation really came from long ago and far away. I was in 10th grade, yes, 10th grade, and I had an English teacher that caught me doing bird calls from the back of the class on the first day of class. I had never been caught. I'd been doing bird calls in class for years and had never been caught, and she caught me. And she looked at me and she said something to me that I will never forget. And that was, David, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. That line was later adopted by Head and Shoulders as their tagline for their shampoo. I don't know if she ever got royalties from it, but she should have. I fought my way in that English class to a B. Was happy to have gotten out alive, but she left an impression, and for good reason. Tonight, what I want to talk about is impression management, and we have an opportunity to make impressions everywhere we are. There are just a veritable plethora of opportunities, elevator speeches, whatever the heck that means when we're out and we're in an elevator. Going back to professional association meetings, at some sort of personal gathering. We have physical get-togethers either on Zoom or actual live. We have voice get-togethers where we've gone either camera off or we're simply on the phone. We have written communications. I'm going to talk a little bit about resume, a little bit about LinkedIn. We'll get a little bit into Facebook as well, very little. We'll talk about emails and how to make an impression there, and we'll see where that takes us. I will be presenting and not really monitoring chat. So if there are questions, I'm hoping Harry or Tom or someone can look. Otherwise, I'll look at the end. And I am more than willing to stay around as long as people want to answer questions. So while, people may say, goodness, it's getting late, I am good until we're done. 100 years ago, it seems, there was a cartoon that I actually had to cut, paste, photocopy, put in a slide. And it's two, obviously, they look like they're from the 50s to me, the way they're dressed. Gentlemen who are saying, I've got an elevator speech, an escalator pitch, or an elevator pitch, an escalator pitch, and just to be safe, a stairway pitch. And that's sort of the way I feel about that. And I'm going to assume at some point we're going to see a crowded elevator again. But I want to talk about being ready to have a conversation or introduce yourself at any given time. There's a wonderful book that has been written and rewritten by Susan Rowan called, the book is How to Work a Room, and there's a wonderful area she's got on steps for planning your presence. And really, this is the kind of thing you need to think about whenever you leave the house. And if you are on a live Zoom meeting where you have an opportunity to be seen and or heard, you have to be ready from the moment you hit camera on or you show up by name, even camera off. You need to be ready with your positive presence. So first and foremost, you have to adopt a positive attitude. Now, I joke about this, but if you're going somewhere, no matter what it is, you are going to hope to get something out of it. And hopefully, if you are attending tonight, you are getting something out of this presentation. I know I really enjoyed hearing Christina. I thought she was very motivational. Tom and Harry always do a great job. Start just by assuming you're going to have a good event, and that will bring you to the right place. Every event has benefits, and I joke about that when I think about some of the events that I have been to in my life. If anybody ever looked at my bio, they would know that I am married to a retired firefighter. She used to run into burning buildings for a long time. And we would go to firefighter events. In fact, we've got a major picnic, even as a retiree, we've got a big picnic for the fire department. She was on this coming Saturday afternoon. And I would be the only male that was not a firefighter. So I was the only male spouse. And all the other males were heroes, as my wife was and is, in terms of going into burning buildings. And here I was as the guy that was running out. And I had to think about what I was going to get out of that event. And I also had to think about what I wanted to talk about. That was really important. And these are things you should think about. So if you're an event tonight, and obviously we're not camera positive, but if you're an event live or through Zoom, some sort of technology, focus on the benefits and plan. If we go around the room or go around the Zoom screens, plan how you're going to introduce yourself. Now, I talk about planning. When I hear people introduce themselves, I so commonly hear the first word being is actually a reaction word we use when we're thinking. In all honesty, if you are doing a self-introduction, you should be ready, and you certainly know your name. With that said, should not be your first word. You want to practice this. And by practicing, you should be videoing yourself. You can do that through so many different things, including that little device we call a phone. Play it back and listen to yourself. You will hear what you say. You will see how you say it. You will be in much better shape when you do it live. And live can be through Zoom. Live can also be when we're face-to-face. Prepare your small talk. I will encourage you all to Google News of the Weird. It's now under the name Shepherd Express. And what that is a website that gives you odd stories. I hope they're all true. They're certainly all fun, but they're odd stories to talk about. Small talk about weather, especially in Minnesota, is really boring. Today it's hot, tomorrow it'll be cold, it's going to rain. No one cares. Politics are divisive, unfortunately. You certainly don't want to be talking from a small talk standpoint about politics or weather. So find some other topic. We're going to talk later about reading the paper. And I know that every morning I look at a few different news sites. And frankly, the stories towards the bottom are way more fun than the stories at the top. Obviously, and tragically, we lost the Queen of England today. That is going to dominate the news cycle for quite a while. That will be the first half of any news feed. If you are at an event, look at the second half of the news feed. When we're back live, if you are comfortable doing so, practice your handshake. It is coming back. I have been at lots of events where handshakes are allowed. Yes, we do fist bumps, we do all sorts of things, but the handshake is indeed coming back. And in the work world, it is indeed something that makes an impression. We can probably all remember someone that shook your hand and you were reasonably horrified by either how weak, how strong, or how wet that hand was. Eye contact. We are going to talk about Zoom later on, but eye contact is very important. And on Zoom, eye contact is talking to the camera lens. It's not talking to the screen. It's not talking to either side. It is talking to the camera lens. The camera lens is the eye, and that's what you need to do. Smiling is also very important. Get used to smiling when you're not talking, smiling when you are talking. You want to practice that. When I mentioned practicing your self-introduction and videoing yourself, you should see what your expression is. If you look pained when you're introducing yourself or answering a question, if there's someone on the other side of that video, you need to practice. Practice is indeed important. Staying on that book for just a moment, there's another piece on roadblocks for working a room. And these are all roadblocks that are written about in the negative. So don't talk to strangers is really not what the message is. The message is you always want to talk to strangers. When you get back to a room with other people, or if you're in a breakout room on Zoom where they do breakout small group networking gatherings, start the conversation. When you're in a room with someone, look for someone that doesn't know anybody else. They're looking around the room, they're hoping for a friendly face. You're there, you don't know anybody. Go up to them and start a conversation based on how uncomfortable you are. You can go up to them and simply say, you look like you're looking for someone, you don't seem to know anybody right here. I don't know anybody. My name is David. They're going to introduce themselves. You'll fist bump, you'll handshake, you'll do whatever you do. And you will start laughing about the fact that neither of you knew anybody. You will start looking for another person to come into the room that doesn't know anybody. You two will go up to them and say, hi, I'm David. This is Christina. We don't know anybody here. We met seconds ago and we're best friends now. Who are you? And you create your own group. It's fun to do. And frankly, you're going to make some really interesting networking contacts that way. Wait to be properly introduced. The definition of a host, and this goes with that last one, good things come to those who wait. The definition of a host when you're at a party or an event is someone who's responsible for introducing and making you comfortable. The role of a guest is to wait to be properly introduced. If you are at an event, if you're in a Zoom meeting where you're all just sort of looking at your phone while you're on another screen, start talking to someone. Get out there and start meeting people. Waiting for that to happen may be a long and arduous wait. I promise this is the last slide from this particular book, but there are 6 items that she recommends on how to start a lively conversation. And most people that I know are uncomfortable talking to someone from a small talk standpoint. So let me give you 6 quick items from Susan, not from me, but I think they all make sense. Now, I don't know anybody really that gets a newspaper anymore. However, I read 3 online every morning. It doesn't take long. I'm not reading them cover to cover. I'm sort of reading the first page, but I'm reading the bottom half of the page more readily than I'm reading the top half of the page. I read both Fox and CNN because I figure at some point, if I average the 2, I'll probably get something close to neutral. And I always check on the Star Tribune to see what's going on. And I read a few different sections of the Star Trib online just to see what's going on. So if people ask me about major news events, what's happening locally, what's happening nationally or globally, at least I've heard of something that allows me to interact in conversations. Next week, I have a week full of meetings with different clients, different industries, on different roles that we're working to fill. And whenever I see an article on anything I'm reading, be it a professional journal, so on and so forth, I make a copy of it and put it into a file online, clip and collect, so that I can pull that article out before the meeting. Sometimes I even print it out and present it to the person I'm talking about. Hey, I thought you might find this of interest. We're doing a search right now for a CEO of a very unusual specialty construction company. It's a family-owned company, and we're going to help them find a non-family CEO. And I was reading an article that I found through a professional journal on top 10 important things in hiring your first non-family CEO. What a specific article. Now, obviously, I'm reading things that make sense for what I do for a living, but this article was spot on. And when I get ready for the meeting, I'm going to have 7 copies of that article because I will be meeting with 7 people from the board to talk about hiring a non-family CEO. You should read everything you can get a hold of. If you are actively in a job search, or frankly, even if you're not, you should be involved in professional associations and industry associations. You want to read those newsletters and journals that they put out so you are as up to date as you can be on your industry, what's going on competitively, but also what's going on in your particular profession. Take note and take notes. Every phone that exists today has a notepad. If someone says something, if you need to remember to do something, jot it down on your phone. It's no longer considered rude to pull out your phone, pull up the notepad and do something. You actually want to make sure it happens and get into the habit of every night or every morning when you get up, just checking that notepad to see if there's something you should be doing. One of those most important things, by the way, is if someone says, hey, you said you were in transition, why didn't you send me your resume? I can't begin to tell you how many people I've mentioned that to that have never followed up. And we're talking at this point, years and decades. Take note, take some sort of notes, write it down, do it. Humor, the AT&T role, appropriate, tasteful, and tactful. If you are presenting and you are going to be trying to tell a joke, and most people do not do well at telling a joke, please test it out with people that you trust. And by trust, what I mean very simply is people that will tell you, please never tell that joke again, or you aren't good at this, or that wasn't funny, or you just offended 1/3 of the world, whatever that happens to be. Use humor, but appropriately. So test it out before you do it live. The best conversationalists I know are the people that talk the least. They listen. And a person that's actively listening and nodding and encouraging and commenting when it's appropriate is oftentimes considered the most appropriate conversationalist. Wow, it was so fun talking to Christina. She really was so attentive and she really had points that she added that were great. She may have talked 10% of the time. You could have talked 90% of the time. She will be viewed very, very positively. So if someone is actively listening and commenting appropriately, that makes you an incredible conversationalist. It's time to get into Zoom. It's time to get into physical appearance. There have been multiple studies done across the country on how we are judged, the impression that we make. And so let's first of all talk about physical appearance. Now, I am sitting here in my chair in my office wearing what is now called a ZIRT, Z-H-I-R-T or Z-I-R-T. That term came about during the pandemic, and it's a Zoom shirt or blouse, ZIRT. I'm in a sport coat, and I'm wearing jeans. Very comfortable. It works, but all you know about me is from here up, so I'm wearing a ZIRT, and I'm dressed appropriately for this event, yet I'm wearing jeans. So if I get up, you will go, oh, he's sort of casual today. Yeah, it works. But we're judged based on how we are seen. And the studies that are out there talk about the fact that in the first 5 minutes, even if we know the person, we judge them 60% based on how they look, 33% based on how they sound. Remember, you don't want to start with and only 7% based on content. 7%. Within 5 minutes, the ratios start to change, but we never in the United States, in our society, judge someone more than 50% based on content. It's always appearance and voice. Those two are huge. And initially, that first 5 minutes, if you are live or you are on Zoom, it's based on 60% physical appearance. Now, let's talk about Zoom, because in all honesty, it is physical appearance. So we have two little graphics here, one of the person in the sport coat, and I'm hoping shorts, although I don't know what he is wearing beyond the sport coat. And it looks like he's got a collared shirt on. That's all I know. So hopefully he will not get up during his meeting, but he is going to be judged from here up. So hopefully that all works. Poor Joe Smith has decided just to go with his name. So he is not camera positive. We don't know what Joe is doing. So if I called on Joe, Joe may or may not answer. He could be off getting a cup of coffee. He could be off doing all sorts of things. We make judgments about Joe because Joe is physically not appearing. That is an impression. Now, Zoom, whether we like it or not, is here to stay. I had a wonderful live meeting this morning. I was casual as I am now, sport coat, jeans, and it was fun to have breakfast with a live person. The rest of my day was either phone or Zoom. And it's just here to stay. It's so easy. We've reduced commute time. One of my Zoom meetings today was actually with someone in Sweden, so we weren't going to get together physically. She is a client, so we had much to say. I'm not sure what she was wearing from here down. She doesn't know what I was wearing from here down, but Zoom is here to stay. Interestingly, Zoom technology is still in its infancy. When we started really using Zoom or Teams or Google Meets or WebEx or whatever we want to do, it was really in March of 2020. At that time, Zoom used to have about 3 million hours a week of meetings through Zoom, and they immediately upped it to about 300 million. And while 2.5 years have passed since we started using Zoom all the time because of the pandemic, it's still early technology. Where they have spent most of their time, Zoom and others, is on security. We used to hear a lot about people Zoom bombing meetings. Some nasty things were happening at religious institutions where people were just being very inappropriate. You had problems in all sorts of situations. Schools were very nervous about Zoom classrooms. So all of the investment, it seems, was being made on security. The weakest part of Zoom is the virtual background. So if you are using a virtual background, if you're blurring your background, if you're trying to use a screen behind you, what happens is you move back and forth and we talk with our hands and we move a bit. We are that type of society. We lose part of you. We lose your ears, we lose some fingers. That can be inappropriate. Be careful. Ideally, find a room with a background that you are okay with. I'm in my office. You can see that it's messy, but it's reasonably appropriate. And yes, over my right shoulder is a working crank phone. If I plugged it in, I could actually get calls, but I can't dial out because there's no way to get to an operator anymore, just for what it's worth. When you are on Zoom, you are always visible. You just need to know that. You don't know if you're being looked at. I assume I am because I'm speaking, but you are always visible. If you look away, if you start grabbing a bottle of water, if you do whatever you're supposed to do, everybody sees it and you need to know that. So if you're having a sidebar that you might have if you were in a live meeting where you look over to the person who is next to you and you say something, you really want to be aware that everybody is seeing that when you're on camera. Now, I want you to think like you're an engineer, and let me explain what that means. I mentioned earlier that the camera lens is eye contact. So that is level to level where we're talking. Most laptops, if you're sitting at your kitchen table or sitting at a desk, the laptop camera, the laptop lens is below your eye level, and you want it to be on par at your eye level, which means the camera is looking up your nose and we are seeing the lights and your ceiling. We are not seeing what you want people to see. It's really not a pretty view. So thinking like an engineer simply means that you need to build a platform under your laptop. Excuse me, I'm fine, thank you. We have the cleaning staff coming into my building, so I just politely sent them away. My apologies. You want to build a platform under your laptop. At our house, my wife and I joke, under our laptops, we have something we call Zoom Tupperware. It is Tupperware that we have now marked with a Sharpie for Zoom use only, and it is the exact right height to get either of our laptops up. So if we're doing a virtual happy hour with some friends of ours from out of town, or if I am working from the kitchen table and I'm doing a quick meeting for a nonprofit, whatever it is, I will put the Zoom Tupperware under my laptop so that the camera is eye contact. That's what thinking like an engineer is. If you are ever doing a stand-up presentation, now if I stand up right now, my camera is you're gonna see me basically at the waist. It's not a good look. You don't want to do that. So if you're standing up, you need to build a really interesting platform under your camera, under your computer. When I do stand-up presentations from my house, I actually do it from the kitchen because behind the kitchen is a beautiful formal dining room. It's a great view. And on the kitchen table is a chair, 4 cookbooks that I know are the right height for under my laptop, so it's spot on. That's thinking about as an engineer. You want to know your background. I mentioned one of the cleaning staff came in. People walk behind all sorts of Zoom meetings that I'm in. I was once in a Zoom happy hour with a client. This was at the height of the pandemic, and her husband walked by in his underwear. It was one of the funniest things I saw, but I don't think she thought it was as funny as I did. Please be very, very careful. Know what's in your background. If you've got kids, especially teenagers, they show up in all sorts of interesting ways. Just know your background and what is around. If you are relegated to a bedroom, seeing your open closet is probably not what you want me to see, or seeing your, the hall tree with all the coats and who knows what. Again, know what is behind you and set yourself up appropriately. And as I've mentioned multiple times, talk to the lens, that is eye contact. Keep in mind, if you are just sitting and listening and people can see you, and I know I can't see all the participants right now, you may have resting crabby face, we'll call it that. That's where you need to have been practicing your smile. Okay. There is a show on called The Voice. I have to tell you, I've never watched it. I've never listened to it either. However, the concept of The Voice is simple. People are judged only based on how they sound. In those same studies that talked about the fact in the first 5 minutes, you're judged 60% on how you look. If all they can do is hear you, you are judged 70% based on how you sound and only 30% based on how the content of what you're saying. 70% is based on your voice, your inflection. Do you use ums and ahs consistently? That makes an impression. You really want to go back to that video recorder, we call it a phone, and hear yourself. Now, if you are going to be on a phone call with someone, talking with the phone right at your ear is very, very awkward. Or if you have a landline, using that receiver is a very, very awkward thing to do. Please invest in a decent hands-free setup or a decent set of headphones, something with a microphone that doesn't make you look like you're at the International Space Station. Something, though, that has good quality. They can hear you, but your hands are free. We talk with our hands. That's the way our society works. You do not want one of your hands tied up with either a cellular device or a corded device. Either way, you're judged 70% based on how you sound, so give yourself every advantage. On that note, talking in a coffee shop is the nastiest place you can ever do an interview. Why? Have you ever heard them grind beans for espresso? You know how loud that can be. So even if you are at the end, the back of the coffee shop, people will hear that noise. So please don't do any phone interviews or important phone conversations from a coffee shop, even though they have good Wi-Fi. Written impressions. There are books and books and books and books and books on resumes. You can go online and Google writing a resume and have millions of hits. I am not here to tell you how to write your resume or how to write your LinkedIn page. That isn't where we want to go. However, I do want to talk about the impressions that they make. Keep in mind that resumes that you send may look different on your screen than they look on my screen, even though it's a Word document, maybe a PDF. Either way, you're assuming that I have the same version of Word and the same version of Windows that you do. You're assuming that you may be Apple, but I'm not. I'm operating on an HP, not an Apple. They don't always convert well. So please check things out before you send them over. And the fancier you make your resume with different fonts and different graphics and lines and columns, the more likely it is to look a little messy when it comes out on the other side. So sometimes the best looking resume is going to be the one that is the most simple in terms of formatting. Now, there are all sorts of different formats for resumes. I've never met a recruiter that said, I love functional resumes. They all prefer chronological. A functional resume is harder to read and in all honesty does not make the best first impression. We're all about impressions at this point. You can check out a couple of these sites, Top Resume, Resume Check. There are others that will give you a better view of what people see when you send your resumes. Memorable resumes are resumes that are laid out simply. It seems to be common now that people use columns or little boxes with skills or areas of expertise, or they put their education in a box, or they decide it would be fun to put their phone number and their email address on the bottom in the footer. Please, the simpler the resume, the easier it is, and you do not want your reader to be aggravated looking for something as simple as a way to reach you. Same thing with LinkedIn. There are all sorts of fun things you can do in terms of pictures and graphics, so on and so forth. Sometimes simple is better. Proofreading. I think individuals are incapable, or more correctly, I should say, I am personally incapable of proofing my own work. And anytime I send something out to a client, I have at least 2 people in my 6-person company read it for me. When I write a blog for our website, and I am the blog writer, and we put out 1 entry every month, I have 2 people look at it, and we still miss errors sometimes. If you send a resume out with a typo in it, it will make an impression. Please have other people look at it. If you are going to proofread your own work, the best thing you can do, believe it or not, is read your resume or read your email backwards. If you read anything forwards, you read groups of words. If you read things backwards, you will read each word individually, so you'll at least catch overt spelling errors. Resume sections. If you are trying to make an impression about the great skill set and experiences that you have, don't assume that having 1 experience section is the best way to go. You may have some experience you want to sell from a previous position, so having a related experience and an other experience section may be the best way to go. For education, same thing. You may want to have education where you got your original degree. I got mine long ago and far away. But you might also want a professional development or continuing education section to highlight some of your more recent skills. That will make a different impression. There's a writer by the name of Annie Fisher. She's a writer, a blogger. I seem to catch her either in Forbes online or other places, and she's put out some items, and this is a conglomeration of multiple posts on what's wrong with your resume. She talks about formatting. She talks about resumes that oftentimes use an objective, where the objective says something along the lines of seeking a professional opportunity with growth potential. Doesn't say anything. You've wasted space. If you are multilingual, if you have certain certifications, if you have letters behind your name, putting those in places that are hard to find are a challenge. Resume should be no longer than 2, I'll even go to 3 pages. I received a resume once that was 23 pages. It was not a curriculum vitae. It was not an academic resume. It was someone's resume. It was 23 pages. I can tell you that I did not read it. What else is wrong with your resume? I still get resumes that tell me a person's age, height, weight. I had one of my favorites. It said marital status 3 times. Wow, that was interesting. It's not relevant. Please do not put personal information on your resume. And then frankly, from a resume impression standpoint, if you simply point, attach, click, send, and you've applied for a job that you're not qualified for, that makes an impression, but not necessarily the one you want. Each year, LinkedIn comes up with a list of the top 10 overused resume phrases. And this is a list from actually a couple of years ago. I've decided to keep this list up because it makes me laugh. Why does it make me laugh? There is not one word on this list that is bad. There isn't one phrase, problem solver, proven track record, results oriented, that is a bad thing. It's not the words, it's can you back it up? So if your resume says innovative, and there's not one example of anything you've done that is innovative, or if you work for a company that is known to be very steady, doesn't change at all, the word innovative is probably one that you wanted to use to sell yourself, but it doesn't fit. If your summary at the top of your resume says results oriented and your resume has 0, and I mean 0 results, it's a list of responsibilities, but nothing in terms of accomplishments, that phrase is useless and actually makes a bad impression. If it says you are entrepreneurial, but you've spent your life at 3M or Cargill, both marvelous employers, they're not necessarily known as entrepreneurial headquarters. That's what's wrong with this list. So keep that in mind when you're trying to make an impression. Emails. How do you not get lost in email? So while you can't see it, I have been getting emails throughout this presentation. I've gotten 12 so far that have come in. I don't know what they are because I don't want to know what they are. I'm focused on this presentation, but I know that 12 things have come across my screen while we have been talking so far. I get about 160 a day. That is not being braggadocious, it just is. I get 160, some are solicited, some are unsolicited. I get them, and you want to get your email read. How do you do that? By the way, that does not include text messages, that does not include emails, just about 160 emails a day. So let's talk a little bit about that. A lot of people want to send me their resume. My email address, which was on the cover slide of this presentation, but is also on my website, it's on everything you can possibly find about me, has my email address. It should be pretty simple. It's david@𝙈𝙤𝙤𝙈. Interestingly, when I see the email, and I don't use a preview pane, so all I see is the email address, the time it came in, the subject line. If the opening says to whom it may concern, and they're sending it to david@𝙈𝙤𝙤𝙈, it is not going to be read because they clearly have not thought this through. david@𝙈𝙤𝙤𝙈, it's pretty clear that my name is David. Because I only look at subject lines, I need a subject line that tells me something. So if you're following up from tonight for some reason, you should use your subject line as what I call prime real estate. It is the place to get your message across. saw your presentation at Crossroads, referred to you by Tom, referred to you by Harry, whatever it happens to be, use that on your subject line. If it says introduction, if it says resume, if it says your next hire, forget it. Interestingly, my phone, when I'm checking emails there, my phone gives me a bit more information on the email than my computer does. And that's because I've set my computer up differently. I can see the first couple of lines of an email. I have always been David. For 65 years, I have been David. If your email starts with Dear Dave, we have a problem. But my all-time favorite is the emails that come to my address. Remember, it's david@𝙈𝙖𝙣𝙈 that start with Dear Mary. Mary 𝙈𝙤 and Ken 𝙈𝙤 and myself and me, we formed the company 26 plus years ago, 𝙈𝙤𝙤𝙈 Associates. Mary's name, even though she retired long ago, early retired long ago, Mary's name is still on a lot of our information if you dig far enough. And I get emails addressed to Mary. Dear Mary at David, again, my email address, david@𝙈𝙤𝙤𝙈. The Dear Mary emails do not make good first impressions. Okay, let's talk a bit about social media. The best thing I can say is be careful, but let me explain why. Social anthropologists that study how people interact talk about the fact that we are capable as human beings of having really intimate relationships, knowing about people and their family and their kids and understanding their history with about 150 to 250 people. Now, we know a couple thousand, but we really can't keep track of everybody's kid or grandkid or spouse or job or who knows what with too many people. It just doesn't work. Enter LinkedIn or Facebook. We can friend all sorts of people on Facebook. We can link to all sorts of people on LinkedIn. And some people are LinkedIn open networkers who will basically accept anybody that they can possibly do. I can't see the participants, but I'm guessing some of you, besides me, have a Twitter account. I have to go back to the way I started this presentation. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. So allow me to explain why I am back there. Even though we think we are really good with security settings on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, those three organizations, let alone Instagram, TikTok, so on and so forth, change their settings all the time, which means you really don't know if what you're putting out there is being viewed by more people than you want it to be viewed. Anything you post on LinkedIn, on Facebook, anytime you tweet, just assume you're having dialogue in front of the entire world. You think I may be a little bit paranoid here, but I know that there is a previous congressman who actually did jail time because of some private tweets that he sent. And it was about 3 years ago, it was pre-pandemic, that there were a group of incoming freshmen at Harvard that a month before they were starting school, they somehow got involved with a private Facebook group where they had to post something derogatory, either towards a female or I don't know if it was racial as well. Either way, they had to post something to be part of this group. And the admissions folks at Harvard got wind of this private Facebook group, and each of these students were banned from Harvard. Now, can you imagine your parents coming home and saying, hey, what's new? And I say, well, Mom, Dad, we have been working my entire life to get me accepted to Harvard. And up until 3 minutes ago, I was going, but I did something really dumb. And now I'm not going to Harvard. In fact, I don't have a college I can go to because I put all my eggs in the Harvard basket. Anything you do online is dialogue in front of everybody. Just assume that it is. And the worst part of that is, even if you are really good at your security settings and I send it to someone I really trust, it is their security settings. If they comment, now people can see what I said. It's a problem. So be careful. I will encourage you all on a monthly basis, the first of every month, to Google yourself. Ideally from a computer that doesn't know you. So find someone through a networking group that you're not connected to, that doesn't Google you consistently. Have them Google you and see what they find. Because of the algorithms by Google and other organizations, if I Google myself, I get a certain feed. If you Google me, you will get a slightly different feed, and it's important that I see what you're seeing, not what I Google. Now, if my kids are listening, and my kids are all in their 30s, they are all married, they are all wonderful. I am fortunate they take after their mother, my wife. I Google them once a month as well, and just see what's going on. It is interesting. Some of the things that I find, nothing derogatory, nothing where I've had to call them. Nonetheless, please Google yourself as well. That is the end of my prepared comments. I'm going to hopefully have Tom or Harry out there if there are any questions. I'm also going to stop share. I will answer anything you want. I'm guessing you have to put them in the chat, but I will answer any questions, whether it's from Tom, from Harry, or anyone else, and I will stay as long as you want.
So David, right now, no one has put a question in, but it was out there. So now you've reintroduced it. So hopefully someone who has a question will put it in and I'll read it to you.
Okay, super.
I did find the comment that you made about the companies changing their security settings to be somewhat something I hadn't thought of, and something I'll have to remember for sure.
Facebook, it seems, and I have an active, I believe Facebook is for play, and I've got a different population on Facebook than I do on LinkedIn. What I will tell you though is Facebook seems to change their security settings every few months. And in all honesty, I don't do anything on Facebook that I wouldn't be proud to show anybody. There's nothing I do. I'm not political on Facebook. I'm not derogatory on Facebook. Nonetheless, I just assume if it's on Facebook, the entire world, if they are bored and looking for me, they can find it. So they can see it whether they're a friend of mine or not. But Facebook does change its how they use your pictures, how they use your videos, who can see what, at least a few times a year, it seems. I know LinkedIn changes all the time.
Right.
Same thing. I don't know if I could ever keep up with all the changes, so I just assume that anything I do is public. It's an easier and probably rather safe assumption.
Much so, yes. That always be safe rather than sorry. That's for sure.
Correct.
Still, okay, here's a question. A lot more Zoom interviews now. How often to look away, to not look like you're staring at the camera? So are you looking too much?
Great question. So whoever submitted that, thank you. Thank you for doing so. First and foremost, you can only see what is behind me and slightly to my sides. So anything I have in front of me, you are not aware of. So you don't know what is hanging in front of my desk. You don't know, assuming I'm not staring, what is down in front of me. You can set things up so that you actually have your resume right in front of you and you're just occasionally glancing at it if you'd like interviewing with your resume. I don't know why people do that, but they do. You can have certain keynotes. These are the 3 points I want to make, and you can have 3 little Post-its in front of you. to make sure that those points are made. You can have them. So you don't need to look away. Now, that said, when people ask me a question and it really makes me think, I'm an upright thinker. So I think in this direction. Looking away when you're thinking is what you would do if you were live. Don't be bothered by it. If you are concerned you're looking away too much, I'm a broken record. Go back to that video, have someone do a video or a Zoom interview with you and record it. Play it back privately, but play it back 3 times. Once you're going to play it back video only, so you will see what you're doing from a standpoint of here up and what your head is doing. Then play it audio only. You'll hear what people are hearing. And then play it with both. You'll be sick of it by then, but play it with both and you'll see what people see, hear what people hear. You will know if you look away too much. They're really, I mean, obviously you want to talk to the camera lens, but looking at something or thinking is not a problem. Again, I'm going to go back to the fun part of Zoom is you have no idea what I'm looking at right now. So if I had 3 points I wanted to make and I had 3 Post-its hanging from my computer screen, you would never know. I don't, by the way, but you would never know.
Good. Okay.
Great question.
So I'll wait for more questions, but I did have a question of my own. When you're interviewing, when you used to do, when you do phone interviews, they always said that if you could stand, you could project better energy, generally speaking. Do you speak, or I mean, when you have a Zoom interview at this time, can you stand? I mean, is standing something that you would recommend, especially if you're more energetic, you use your hands better, you make better eye contact, and you look more, you can really be, more powerful that way?
If you are more, great question, thank you. If you are more comfortable standing in a presentation, in an interview, etc., and you can do it through Zoom that way, more power to you. I can tell you, I interview people for a living, and I can't think of one person I've ever interviewed that stood during their interview, at least that I'm aware of. Now, it is conceivable that I can tell you I'm sitting right now, but it is conceivable that I'm standing right now and I've got a very, very tall chair and a standing desk. And that may be the way to go. But if you're simply standing and I can see more of your body than you might want me to see, I don't mean that in a negative or pejorative sense, but if I'm seeing you sort of standing up, I'm going to wonder why, because that isn't a typical interview stance. So if you can set it up where we're still seeing you, the 𝙬𝙤𝙬𝙗, the Zoom shirt or blouse up, we're seeing this, but you're at a standing desk and it looks natural and you feel better, go for it.
Okay, very good.
But I truly have never interviewed anybody that I know of that was standing.
Well, there seems to be a lot more people with standing desks these days. So you would just, if you were, if the computer was moved up to where it was, supposed to be, it's possible that it would only show your 𝙬𝙤𝙬𝙗, like you said. So, but
I'm chuckling. I'm sitting here in my office and I have a roll top desk that was designed to use technology with it. So it's got the appropriate ports and things for computers, but it weighs approximately 1,500 pounds. It's not going to stand for anybody.
Got it. Okay. Well, we don't seem to be getting any questions. So you've obviously made great points.
Well, I hope so. That or I put people to sleep. I'm open to either idea. I am going to put the presentation back up if I may be so bold. And for anybody that is still online, that's not what I wanted to see. Hold on here. Well, you're seeing the version that you probably don't want to see, but nonetheless, can I do that? There we go. If you look, there's my email address. Again, it's david@𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤@magie.com. Feel very, very comfortable emailing me questions. In the subject line, put Minnesota Crossroads Career Network presentation. I will get to that email post haste. and promise to respond. So David@𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤.com if you do have questions that you are not asking for some reason.
Okay, well, we did get a question while you were doing that, and let's see. You still get the occasional "what do you do outside of the office" question. Any limitations on how you respond?
Great question. Oh my God, I love that question. I love the question you ask. Are there, any things we shouldn't talk about? Sadly, there are certain hobbies and interests that are divisive in this world. I'm not necessarily sure why all of them are, because you have half the people that like them and half the people that don't, and you really don't know which half you're talking to. Before you are faced with that question, do everything you can do to find out about the person you are interviewing. So if you're interviewing with me, my bio is prominently displayed on my company's website, and it tells you some of my interests: sports cars, martial arts, so on and so forth. You can take probably some more risks with me than you might with others. I'm not sure I would say I'm a member of PETA or a member of NRA. I sort of put those two on opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm not sure what the heck that spectrum is, but I put them on opposite ends. I would pick something that may be a little more benign in terms of the emotional chatter that could create. As I say that, though, if I was a member of PETA or I was a member of some organization that is viewed by others as potentially controversial, if someone reacts badly to it, I'm not sure I would want to work with that person if I am truly a passionate member of something. It is a risk you need to pre-think, though. That's why you always practice interview before and you should practice the way you're going to play. Before you go to a real interview, you should be practiced and ready to go. And you should pre-decide what you want to say. Avid reader, avid runner, love the outdoors, or I'm a member of the NRA, I target shoot, and I carry a gun. That will probably cause some people to go, wow, how interesting, and others to go, hey, the door is right there.
Okay, excellent job. Thanks for the knowledge you shared with us. That came from one of the people, Miles Williams shared that. So, and Ed Pickens asked
Miles,
most
I'll
of the
send you a
questions.
check, by the way, Miles. Thank you. Okay.
So I just thought, well, we're at the point where if we have no other questions, you've done your job effectively, as always, David. Thank you. We appreciate you being here tonight. I did, as always, I did learn a lot, and thank you very much for your time and effort. It was
my honor. Thank you for having me here, Tom. Harry, if you're still around, thank you as well, and God bless you all. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. And at this point, then, I will share with you what Crossroads can do for you by sharing my screen here. I will do that in 1 second. For some reason, I am slower than I usually am. Okay, so, and now I've got, there we go. What you see in front of you is a book that if you're signing up for this seminar, you would receive through our, you will receive for being a member here tonight or for signing up for this seminar. And it's devotionals by Dale Kreckenkamp, and it's a very good book. It can be very helpful for us who are in transition, and I would highly recommend you use it and enjoy. You've no doubt you've been to our website if you've signed up for this seminar, but check it out, mncrossroads.com. It has all the great things that we offer, mostly free of charge. We have a job board on there with employers who would have to leave their name or a contact person. So if you're interested in finding out more about it or have questions, you certainly can reach out to them. There's quite a few jobs on there. Employers
are often reaching out to us looking for different things. So you'll find that. And it's just really good for all levels of, so check it out. And I'm going to talk about some of the other things that you'd find on there. So what I alluded to early on when I did the introduction is there's 3 Crossroad groups. The one in Eden Prairie at Grace Church. There's the one in Woodbury at Woodbury Lutheran Church. And there's the one in Arden Hills at North Heights Lutheran Church. Now, these 3 sites would be holding the meetings if we weren't on the Zoom webinars as we are now. We have not set a date for going back online or going back on site, but we probably will stay online even if we do go back. So look forward to that communication somewhere down the road, but these are the 3 sites that we currently have of Crossroads. Weekly opportunities through Crossroads. Networking with Grace is the #1 thing that I want to highlight. It meets every Thursday morning. It is online. It's done by Wes Roper and Wes Tang, 2 consummate networkers. They will help you immensely at networking. I highly recommend that you just check it out. They'll help you with networking nuance that you probably haven't thought of if you're new at it, especially. So check that out on the website and get signed up. It meets every Thursday morning. One-on-one coaching. We talked, David talked a lot about, resumes, interviewing, Zoom in general. You're having questions, you have things that you want to practice, you have questions about your resume. We have the ability to help you through coaching online on our website. So check it out. It's available anytime. So just sign up and someone will get back in touch with you. This transition role that we all go through, a roller coaster that we all go through, can be very difficult at times. And sometimes we need just a little extra help. And having some people praying for you would be great. Well, we have a team of people that really, really want to help you through prayer. So if you need that help, get online and check it out and see if that lifts you up like it does many. Online classes. Christina talked about it in her talk about being in transition. And one of the things that she found very helpful was our online class. It's our 8-week small group class. It meets over 8 weeks. It's 8 different modules. It breaks things into, it helps people with their attitude and preparation and looking at, what do they need to improve upon? What are they great at? What are their skills? So that when they are interviewing, they can highlight those things. They can highlight them in their resumes. How to network. I mean, we have networking with Grace, but the group itself works with and helps people with their networking and their skills and how often to network. You heard Christina talk about it, and her, that it's often recommended that you network with at least 10 to 15 people a week to be successful at job search and transition. So that's something we have a whole section on resumes, and we know how important they are at making that first impression. So that's critical. Interviewing. We do a lot of things in interviewing. We do a lot of things about, the elevator pitch or the, tell me about yourself. Those are really important things that we have to be very successful at if we want to be successful at getting that next career opportunity. So, these classes really help you hone those skills, really to help you in a lot of different ways. One of the key things too is you can develop friendships, you can develop key accountability partners, things of that nature, so that'll be really helpful when you're down in the dumps and you need a little pick-me-up. There's somebody there to help you and encourage you in a lot of ways. So that's what our small groups do, and they really do give you that perspective that Christina was talking about, like God's helping hand. And I think you'll find that to be so. The new classes starting each month. Check it out on the website. You can sign up right there, and you'll find it very helpful. One additional thing that we have is we have our own LinkedIn group. There's about 2,500 members. Each of those members has probably gone through some sort of transition at least once, and is willing to help in a lot of different ways. There's information posted there, there's events posted there, there's all sorts of really important things that you can learn via LinkedIn. Somebody's sharing. So check out our group on LinkedIn. All you have to do is type in MN Crossroads Career Network in the search bar, and it'll pop it up. And you can then at that point decide to join and do so, and hopefully get the information you want and desire. If you thought our presentation tonight was something you want to rewatch, you can check that out on our YouTube. It'll be posted as early as tomorrow. And you can check it out through our YouTube channel by typing in MN Crossroads Career Network there. And you'll find our previous seminars. We had, there's a picture of Dale Henry on this slide. Dale just recently did his seminar last Thursday. So most likely his is up online, and it'll be very helpful. So check out our YouTube channel. I think you'll find some very important seminars there if you don't already know about it and use it. So, additional resources. We have a great partner at Crossroads, and that's Thrivent, and they have helped us in a lot of different ways with a lot of different programs, with financial support and other things. One of the things they're doing right now is they're helping people who are in need of financial help, and through seminars in that way. So check that out on the website. You can sign up for it. You can check it out on their website. So schedule, you can see the schedule and the details behind it. I highly recommend you look at that if you're in need of financial help, especially through your transition period. Volunteers. Crossroads doesn't work without our volunteers. Here's a cross section of some of those volunteers, a lot of different faces out of, all very helpful, all with smiling faces. And at the bottom is Harry. He's holding us all up. Actually, he's behind the scenes tonight. I always forget to thank Harry for being here and making sure everything is running smoothly. He's he's someone that you can always count on. So he's here to help us and help me tonight, especially. So I appreciate that. And right now, it's more important than ever to have to have a spiritual home. You can check out one of our sites here that hosts Crossroads: Woodbury Lutheran Church, North Heights Church, and Grace Church. All great sites. You might find your spiritual home at one of these three. So check it out online, go and see it, and you might go in person and join in with the service and see if it's for you on Sunday morning. So that's Crossroads, I hope. So one of the things that I'd like to share, tell you is next Thursday, there'll be another seminar at 7:30 in the morning. Go on the website, check it out. You'll find that that'll be helpful. Sign up for one of our classes, our 8-week courses, if you're in need and want additional help. If you're ready for an interview, or you're just trying to get ready, your resume ready, or do certain things, and you need help, the website is perfect. And networking with Grace. Networking is the most important thing. 80% or more of jobs are obtained through networking. I highly recommend that you're networking on a consistent basis. If you're not, get with Networking with Grace, and they can help you in a lot of different ways that you may not have thought of. So a lot of the great services here through Crossroads are available. Like I said, free of charge. We're here to help, and I hope you take advantage of it. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We sure did appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoyed and got a lot out of the seminar by David Magic, and I really did. And then the actual, I want to thank Christina for allowing us to use her online seminar, her online video. So, because I really enjoyed that also. I hope you did. And I'd like to say, I hope you have a good evening and good night.